Hi friends, in this video we are going to study two important topics under the UPSC Mains examination under General Studies paper 1. These two are Capitalism and Communism. When you study these two topics, please ensure that you study from an examination point of view. Don't waste time studying things that are not needed for the syllabus. For example, don't waste time studying in depth about the leaders, their life history and so on. At the most, you should know the important thinkers and leaders and their ideology. Apart from that, you should be able to cross compare and analyze these two philosophies, and most importantly, you should apply the philosophies from an Indian point of view, right? So these are all needed for the examination. First, let's discuss the philosophy called capitalism. Capitalism is largely an economic philosophy. Capitalism is nothing but an economic system which is characterized by private ownership of means of production. Now, what is this means of production? Means of production is nothing but the factors that are needed for production. For example, capital, that is investment, okay, labor force, land and so on. The means of production will be in the hands of private sector in these capitalist countries. This private sector could be individuals, entities or large corporation. Government won't have any role in the economy. It won't decide what has to be produced in the economy, who has to produce, how it has to be produced. Also, the government won't run any enterprises or industries. At the most, it will just regulate the economy. Another important aspect of capitalism is profit. Profit is nothing but the gain obtained from surplus in production. This will be appropriated by the private sector based on an individual's talent, skill and his investment. He can appropriate as much profit as he can. This you should understand. Apart from this, in the capitalist system, everything is left to market forces, that is supply and demand. Okay, it is often said the market forces will self-regulate the economy. That's why the system is also called the laissez-faire system. Okay, we can find capitalist systems mainly in the Western countries, in the Western hemisphere, USA and Western European countries like UK, Germany, France, Italy and so on. Even in Eastern hemisphere, you can find the system in some countries like Japan, South Korea and so on, right? Apart from the economic aspect, there is a political aspect also associated with capitalism, that is democracy. This is very, very important. Most of the capitalist countries, they are democracies, at least on paper, right? If not in 100% reality. So these countries, they argue for democracy. They argue against authoritarianism and dictatorship. This is one of the important philosophies, okay? Now, let's discuss the second philosophy. Communism is a large umbrella philosophy. It is a social philosophy, economic philosophy and political philosophy also. Communism argues, it envisages a stateless, classless, moneyless society. Okay, so within a communist society, there won't be any classes. All people are equal. Okay. Similarly, there won't be any state also. Okay. There won't be any government also. Similarly, there won't be any money. There won't be any profit. This is what this philosophy speaks about. It is a very utopian philosophy. Okay. This is what you should understand. Within these states, the nature of the society is egalitarian. Okay. These societies are often referred to as socialist societies. Okay. In fact, there are many forms of socialism. You can observe the socialism as a concept under the communist countries. Okay. Under socialism, like I said, there won't be any classes. All are equal. In capitalist societies, there are generally two classes. One is bourgeois, that is the owners. The other is proletariat, who is the working class, right? But in the communist societies under socialism, there won't be any classes at all. Everybody is equal. Similarly, there is no money at all, right? Whatever is obtained from production will be appropriated by the government, which is the state, okay? And this will be equally distributed among all citizens of the country, okay? You may wonder, this philosophy tells there should not be any state, but how a government will distribute. On paper, this philosophy says there won't be any state, there won't be any government, right? But in practice, you will find a state that is a government in most of these countries, okay? This philosophy speaks about dictatorship of proletariat, okay? Proletariat means working class. So this philosophy says that the country should be under the control and the governance of the working people themselves. This is what this philosophy speaks about. Here, the government will run all the enterprises and the industries. Private sector won't have any ownership at all. They can't appropriate any profit. All the wealth will be equally appropriated among all the citizens in the country. Get it? So this is a large umbrella philosophy, very utopian philosophy. It is difficult to implement this philosophy in reality. This is what you should understand. Get it? We can find this philosophy in many countries, okay? Mainly during the Cold War, many countries followed this philosophy, especially the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was the mother of this philosophy, okay, in the modern times. Later, it was followed by other countries like China, Vietnam, North Korea, and many Eastern European countries, okay? So this is what you should understand. So this is basically the difference between these two philosophies. Literally, they are almost poles apart, right? They are polar opposites. Now, let's just cross compare and analyze. On paper, we saw the essence of these two philosophies, but in practice, what is the reality? You should understand this as IAS aspirant. This is very, very important. No country is 100% capitalist. No country is 100% communist. Even in countries that called themselves capitalist countries, there are features of communism. There is a concept of welfare state in such countries. Even in countries like America, France and so on, the government gives subsidies to people. It has a concept of social securities. Some key industries like oil and railways, they are under the control of the state only, that is the government only. You should understand this, okay? Similarly, the countries that call themselves as communist, even here you can find many features of capitalism. Here also capital is involved. Private ownership is also allowed in many of the countries. In many of the communist countries, we can find oligarchy. Oligarchy means only some people, some corporations will have the upper hand in such countries. So there is no 100% pure philosophy observed anywhere. This is what you should understand. Similarly, there has been dictatorship under both the philosophies. For example, under Nazi leadership, this was largely based on capitalism only. Here also we could observe dictatorship. Okay. Similarly, under the communist philosophy also we could observe dictatorship. For example, the erstwhile Soviet Union leaders like Joseph Stalin. Okay. And similarly, Mao. These people were also like dictators. They ruled their countries with a iron hand, right? So you should see the essence of the philosophies only and how they existed in these countries, right? Okay, so you should look at the practical essence contextually, right? So if you just study based on paper and if you write, it's of no use. You should analyze, okay? You should study contextually. This is very, very important. Even a country like China, over the last 40 years, it has diluted many of its communist features. It has adopted the economic system of market socialism, which means socialist economy only, but mixed with many features of capitalism. This is called market socialism. Get it? Similarly, over the years, many capitalist countries have also accepted many features of communism. Okay. So, this is what you should understand, right? Now, let's look at the applicability of these two philosophies for India. India, our country, has adopted features of both these systems. India is a democratic country. It is a socialist state. Okay, it is a secular country. Okay. Now, this socialist has a different meaning, right? Here, it does not refer to the communist form of socialism. This socialism is unique. This socialism, Indian socialism, is called democratic socialism. features of socialism seen in communist countries mixed with democracy, which is a feature of capitalist countries. So you can say the Indian system is largely a mix of these two philosophies, right? Intricately blended to suit the Indian conditions and its people. This is what you should understand. Get it? In the recent time, especially after 1991 LPG, India has been largely imbibing features of capitalism. Before 1991, features of communism and socialism were largely present in our country, because at that time a need was felt that the overall regulation of the economy and the production should be in the hands of the government, that is the state. Later, some inefficiencies were also found in the system. So many people, they argued for liberalization. So in 1991 we went for LPG. Okay, so this is what you should understand, right? Now, during our freedom struggle, many Indian leaders, they were inspired by the philosophy of communism. Many leaders under the broad left spectrum, communist, socialist and so on, they were inspired by the Soviet Union, by the Bolshevik revolution in this country in 1917. They were inspired by the great leader Vladimir Lenin. Okay, right? So this is what you should understand. Leaders like Subhash Chandra Bose, Bhagat Singh, Nehru. So they were largely inspired by the leftist ideology. Soviet Union served as an example for these leaders, right? Even in the late 1930s, 1940s, even Gandhiji, he became increasingly militant. He argued for economic reforms in our country. So what you should understand here is that communism has had a large impact on India and Indian society. Get it? Similarly, capitalists also played a role. Even in freedom struggle, Indian capitalists, they did not side with British. They were part of the Indian freedom struggle. Right? This is what you should understand. Communist parties in India have not adopted the strict form of communism seen in China and erstwhile Soviet Union. They have adjusted themselves to Indian constitution. They have accepted Indian parliamentary system. This is what you should understand, right? They have not gone by the radical, strict views of leaders like Stalin and Mao. Even though they were inspired by their ideologies, Indian communists, they have accepted our parliamentary system. They have accepted our constitution. Okay, so this is what you should understand, right? Apart from this, these two ideologies, they are often, shaping up. They are evolving in many countries around the world. In some periods, the need for capitalism is felt. In some periods, the need for communism is also felt. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for self-reliance was felt. So this was largely inspired by the Soviet Union. They had the 5-year plans, which were later adopted by India. These countries were self-reliant during the Second World War. Just before that, when the Western countries were affected by the Great Depression of 1930s, Soviet Union was largely self-reliant. This country kept developing because of the nature of the socialist economy. This is what you should understand. On the other hand, later the communist countries, the economic growth dipped in those countries. That is why earlier Soviet Union, later China, they imbibed many features of capitalism. The Sino-Soviet split also happened in the late 1950s, 1960s. Right? Get it? So these are all the essential features of both these philosophies. You should understand how these features are observed contextually and how they are seen in the Indian country. I hope this video is helpful to you all. Thank you.